My husband, who is currently living alone for work, called me. Our relationship has already become cold. Hello, how are things over there? His greeting was so casual, it was difficult to believe we hadn't spoken in 3 months. I haven't seen you in a long time. Why are you calling? I'll come back tomorrow. I have something to tell you. I'll be living with Aubrey starting tomorrow, so please leave my castle. Arrogance is at its peak. However, this was not a major issue for me. It was even expected. What is wrong? Say something. I see. Maverick seemed to be anticipating my reaction. However, he appeared disappointed when it did not meet his expectations. Aubrey really likes my house. I don't want to take out another loan just so you can rent a place and live however you want. Serenity appeared from somewhere as if it sensed something. She appeared to know who was on the other end of the phone. She appeared unexpectedly and spoke loudly to her father over the phone. It's okay, we've already decided where we'll be moving. You can return without worry. Maverick was taken aback by Serenity's appearance and said nothing for a moment before appearing to understand the situation and laughing defiantly. I see. The woman I have to support and her rebellious daughter are leaving. That sounds comfortable. But that was not all. I have also filed for divorce. You do not need to contact us anymore. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. Serenity had an indescribable look on her face. Although Maverick seemed to have changed, it was understandable given that she was leaving him. Once a loving biological father. However, it wasn't all bad. I'm always sorry for making you take care of an elderly man like myself. No, that's fine, this is my job. I've spent a long time working as a caregiver under the guise of daycare. I provide home care to the elderly in my assigned area who require assistance with daily activities. This is not an easy job. However, I have always wanted to help others. It felt like a call. Have you recently experienced any changes or difficulties? Not necessarily. Oh, but the other day at the office. The job entails more than just meeting basic needs. For example, he has a long history of success as a businessman, running a large company. His thoughts and awareness remain clear, so he makes occasional visits to the company. However, his body does not always cooperate, and he is unable to work as actively as he once did. This causes him stress. Listening to such stories is also part of our responsibilities as caregivers. As time passed, I informed him that it was time to leave, and he smiled slightly sadly. I'm sorry I spoke so much. It's okay. I'll come back tomorrow. Please take it easy. Thank you. As always, I will be waiting for you tomorrow. I'm home. Welcome back. Our family was not wealthy, but we had built a modest home and lived peacefully with my husband Maverick and daughter Serenity. Or so I thought. Maverick eventually changed. He used to be nice and appreciate our family. However, as he was promoted and given more solo assignments, he began to display arrogance. No matter how good he was at work, this was home. He appeared unable to distinguish between the two. His transformation was so dramatic that it was almost terrifying, as if he had been concealing his true nature all along. At first, he appeared to be in a bad mood. However, his attitude shifted over time, and while he did not resort to violence, his bad-mouthing has recently become more obvious. The target was primarily me. Complaints such as slow meal preparation and clumsiness kept pouring out one after the other. Of course, I was concerned at first, given the volume of bad-mouthing. I assumed he was under a lot of stress and tried to empathize with his struggles, but all of my efforts failed. In the end, he hadn't changed. He had always been this way. I occasionally receive unfair criticism at work, but verbal abuse from a family member is far more difficult to bear. Our 16-year-old daughter, Serenity, tried to mediate between us. She has been my emotional support. What's for dinner tonight? I'm going to make fried chicken. Is there anything you want to eat? No, nothing in particular. I was just curious. Even in such circumstances, she has grown into a strong, bright, and straightforward child. Which is the most satisfying thing for me. Maverick arrived home earlier than usual after we spent some time chatting about trivial matters. However, as usual, he didn't say anything when he returned, so I had to initiate the conversation. Welcome back. You are early. At some point, my attitude had become distant. I was surprised to realize it myself. Yeah, welcome back. Tonight's dinner is fried chicken. Despite this, Serenity interacted with him as usual. At times like this, her fortitude broke my heart. He then responded with an outrageous remark. "You do dirty work taking care of the elderly. Make sure to thoroughly wash your hands before cooking." What an insult! I was stunned by his words and couldn't say anything. My mouth was agape, but Serenity stepped in. "Hey, how do you say that?" That is the worst. Usually, Serenity would act as a mediator, but this time she couldn't remain silent. "What are you? And what is your rebellious phase? What a hassle." He continued to disparage Serenity after saying whatever he wanted. He vanished somewhere. My emotions were in chaos. Finally, I was so shocked that I was unable to cook anything that day. Some time had passed since the incident. One day, Maverick arrived home at his usual time, but something unusual occurred. "Excuse me." A woman I didn't know entered with him. "Excuse me, who are you? Didn't I tell you? This is Aubrey, my subordinate. She will be having dinner here today, so prepare a meal for her." Of course. I had not heard anything about this. Even if I had, I would have refused the request. "Nice to meet you." Aubrey looked about 10 years younger. I immediately understood. I wasn't sure what the true intention was behind today's act, but they were most likely in that type of relationship. If that's the case, it explains why he was so harsh with Serenity and me. To him, we were probably just a burden. Stop procrastinating and prepare dinner quickly. You're really clumsy. It is unbearable. How was I supposed to hurry when I had only recently learned about this? But now that she had arrived, there was no choice. I reluctantly decided to cook an extra portion while preparing the meal. Maverick continued to praise Aubrey because Serenity had quickly retreated to her room. It was clear who he was speaking to. Aubrey is a true career woman. She is both competent and attractive, making her an excellent subordinate. I assumed the next words would be unlike someone clumsy. That is not true. A transparent response. What was I witnessing? "By the way, how do you like our home? It's a new building." At this point, I realized Maverick's true motivation for bringing Aubrey to our home. He wanted to demonstrate that he was the dignified head of the household and to brag about his home. Such obvious shallowness. However, understanding this provided me with a strategy. Not that it was particularly grand, but for the time being, all I needed to do was ignore them. I had a lot of questions, but I could answer them later. It's a beautiful home. I really enjoy it. With that, Aubrey began to relax, as if she were at home. She sank deeply into the sofa, sighed, and looked up to the ceiling. Her thick makeup complemented her thick skin. Maverick, on the other hand, watched her with satisfaction and did not reprimand her. It's not surprising, given that the day's purpose had mostly gone his way. Honestly, I was speechless. I apologized. Serenity, can you wait until dinner? I sent a message to Serenity. I soon received a response. Sure. Oh, can I get some snacks instead? Yes, eat whatever you want. I had to ask Serenity to wait for dinner. When weighing the options of having her eat in this distorted environment versus going hungry for a while, the latter seemed much better. The meal I prepared was nothing special. I simply stir-fried some meat and served it with a side of vegetables. Originally, I intended to make meatloaf, but I lost all motivation. As expected, Maverick slammed it. What's this? Can't you prepare a decent meal? Because you unexpectedly brought a guest, I ran out of ingredients. I apologize, Aubrey, but could you please bear with this? Aubrey said nothing, just looked at Maverick, puzzled. I had no interest in the emotions behind that expression. Cheese. Here's why. Make sure you can cook a proper meal on a regular basis. After that, the conversation ceased to flow, and the atmosphere became one of strangeness. With time passing quietly, Maverick was probably boiling with rage inside, but that couldn't be avoided. If that is how he wants it. He needed to know that I had my own thoughts. If he really wanted to entertain, he should have cooked himself, assuming he possessed the skills. The next morning, I noticed a piece of paper on the dining table. It was strategically placed in a prominent location. It was a sticky note attached to a divorce document. As expected, those two had already decided to get rid of me. Otherwise, there would be no divorce papers here. The day following yesterday's events. The note read, "If you do not intend to change your bad attitude, sign this. I'm leaving on a 3-month business trip. Prepare to leave your house by then. Another business trip. I wasn't sure if it was true or an excuse, but it didn't matter. I could leave this barren area. This note provided some relief to my heart. Serenity, can I speak with you for a moment? I attempted to explain the situation to Serenity when she awoke, but it was unnecessary. She looked at the paper on the dining table and replied, I understand. It's okay. I'll go with you, ma'am. I unconsciously hugged Serenity and cried. 3 months later, Maverick called me. Hello? How are things over there? His greeting was so casual, it was difficult to believe we hadn't spoken in 3 months. I haven't seen you in a long time. Why are you calling? I'll come back tomorrow. I have something to tell you. I quote, I'll be living with Aubrey starting tomorrow, so please leave my castle. Arrogance is at its peak. However, this was not a major issue for me. In fact, it met my expectations. What is wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Is this so? Maverick seemed to be anticipating my reaction. However, when it did not meet his expectations, he appeared disappointed. Aubrey really likes my house. I don't want to get a new house and take out another loan. So you two can just rent a place and live however you want. Serenity appeared from somewhere as if it sensed something. She seemed to know who I was speaking with. She appeared unexpectedly and spoke loudly to her father over the phone. It's okay, We already decided where to relocate. You can return without any worries. Maverick was taken aback by Serenity's appearance and said nothing for a moment before appearing to understand the situation and laughing defiantly. I see. So the woman I have to support and her rebellious daughter are leaving. I suppose I can live comfortably. And that was not all. I've also filed the divorce papers. You do not need to contact me anymore. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. Serenity had an indescribable look on her face. It was understandable given that she was parting ways with her once kind biological father, who had now transformed into a different person. However, it wasn't all bad. Have you settled everything? Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ha ha ha. There's no need to thank me. It is a give-and-take situation. Okay, I'll be on my way. Feel free to contact me if you require anything. 3 days later, one morning, I was woken up by an extremely loud noise coming from the entrance. Someone was banging on the door with no regard. When I realized it, I had a good idea of who it was. Of course, I knew what they'd say. What is happening so early in the morning? Please stop. You are disturbing the neighbors in this mansion, which is far away from everyone who is concerned about disturbing the neighbors. What is this house? Explain everything. Maverick was away on business for 3 months. This occurred. I was taking care of an elderly man. Mr. Anderson was a wealthy man without any relatives. He lost his spouse early on. Mr. Anderson always said this when I visited him. I do not like being alone. That is why I am so delighted when you visit, even if it is for work. In fact, he enjoyed talking and would pay close attention to both important and trivial matters. The most important issue was the situation at home. He has years of experience. He could see through any attempts to conceal marital issues and would gently encourage me to discuss them. As a result, Mr. Anderson became increasingly concerned about Serenity and me as his mobility deteriorated. He began to express more of his worries. But recently, I've been thinking that if I don't like being alone, I should consider moving into a nursing home. So, are you going to put this house up for auction? No, actually. Would you be interested in living here? I couldn't believe his unexpected proposal. I've heard that your husband is quite selfish. If that's the case, you should cut ties with him and move here. I will find a nursing home where you can live with your daughter. Are you serious? I couldn't accept such an offer. What are you saying? You took care of this elderly man and even saved my life. It is a fair reward. No, it is not enough. This is my opinion. I'd rather have someone I want to live with you than sell it to strangers. Indeed. I once paid him a visit outside of working hours, and by chance I discovered Mr. Anderson had collapsed. I provided first aid, called an ambulance, and accompanied him to the hospital. Looking back, if I hadn't stopped by on a whim that day, he might not have survived, Mr. Anderson explained. So what are your thoughts? Would you grant this elderly man's wish and accept the offer? Of course. I'm not in a hurry for an answer, and I don't want to force you. Our long-term relationship was not for nothing. His eyes were sincere, and the offer was exactly what I had hoped for. I had only recently received the divorce papers. The 3 months were fine. I'd have to find a place to live after that. For the time being, I've decided to take the proposal home and think about it. You still have 3 months, correct? Take your time and think about it. Don't forget that I sincerely wish for this. After much deliberation, Serenity and I agreed to accept Mr. Anderson's generous offer. That seems like a good decision. Now I can leave with peace of mind. Thank you. My smartphone rang right at that moment. Yes, it was a call from that time. And now we're in the present. So why am I about to get demoted? I have done nothing wrong at work. I don't know anything about it. In fact, it was the first time I had heard of it. But I could see how things had come to this. Maverick held a relatively high position within the company. I believe it was above the level of a department head, but above him was the mansion's former resident, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson was the chairman of the parent company that Maverick worked for. He must have resembled someone from another planet. I, too, discovered this fact shortly before receiving the mansion, and I was surprised. Mr. Anderson must have taken some action to correct Maverick's behavior. If I do not accept the demotion, I will be fired. Explain why this is occurring. And what is this mansion? I assumed you'd be living in some dilapidated shack. I'm not sure what I don't know. If I had to guess, it's probably due to your attitude. You're a real nuisance. So, would you please leave? I calmly closed the door on him. Where would I be obligated to help now? That being said, what happened to Maverick? Mr. Anderson is probably the person who knows the answer. Around noon, I went to the nursing home where Mr. Anderson lives. Just as you might expect, I made a few changes on my end to consider treating such a diligent and caring individual so poorly. Foolish humans must be taught a lesson. In response, I felt pity for Maverick. Where did Maverick go astray? It is too late to think about it now, but given our long history, I can't help but reflect. I finally feel relieved. I cannot forgive anyone who mistreats a benefactor. However, I apologize for dragging you into an elderly man's selfishness. Even after your departure. I also need to make amends for this. No, that's more than enough. I can't take any more. I apologize, but I must insist on my selfishness until the end. In a way, it is my current reason for living. Please don't take away my enjoyment. When he said it was for his own enjoyment in old age, I couldn't find the right words to respond. In that case, I wanted to maintain a give-and-take relationship rather than simply receiving charity. Even if the scales were tipped, I felt compelled to do so, just as my new life was starting to settle down. I was taking the appropriate action against Maverick and his mistress, Aubrey. According to what I learned from the lawyer during the process, Maverick refused to accept the demotion at any cost and resigned. Given his arrogance, his pride was unlikely to accept the reality of demotion. I nodded when he mentioned that I'd rather quit this job than be demoted. It was easy to envision. It must have been an impulsive decision without regard for the consequences, and the results were obvious. On the other hand, there's Aubrey. Although she received no direct punishment. It appears that even a career woman was unable to overcome the rumors. Even though she didn't resign, she was feeling uneasy. She also broke up with Maverick, who had resigned, and their relationship dissolved. But she couldn't avoid paying alimony, and was reportedly venting her rage everywhere. I felt sorry for her too. But it was her own decision to think about such things and organize various documents. The unfamiliar intercom rang on the monitor. Was the tired-looking Maverick? I didn't want to answer, but it was obvious that ignoring it would result in trouble. I braced myself and opened the door. What do you want? I retracted. I am going to withdraw the divorce. I could not believe my ears. What did he say? See? I apologized. I'm also going to live here. Saying something incomprehensible. Maverick attempted to enter the house. Wait, what exactly are you talking about? There is no way I can let you in. The divorce petition was filed a long time ago, and how does that constitute an apology? This is not an apologetic attitude at all. At this point, he was more than simply arrogant. He was the epitome of arrogance. I couldn't hide my agitation and rushed to close the door. But the embodiment of arrogance obstructed it. If it's your house, it's also my house. Let me in. fear gradually overtook my heart. In the midst of chaos and struggle, I managed to push him out and shut the door. I cannot think clearly. I could only stand in the entrance on the opposite side of the door. Maverick was trying to force his way inside. After about 10 minutes of this, I realized I needed to call the police and dashed to get my smartphone. Just as the commotion outside subsided slightly, "Hey," he was pulled from that side. "Stop it. This is my house. Stay still." I heard such voices, wondering what was happening. I looked through the doorscope and saw Maverick struggling with two uniformed men. It was then that I remembered the mansion was under contract with a security company. Somehow, security personnel had arrived to restrain Maverick. I peered out through the gap. One of the two men saw me and called out, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" I am fine. That's great to hear. We have secured the intruder so you can relax." According to them, the security camera at the entrance captured everything, allowing them to react quickly, given the mansion's location. I couldn't rely on information from neighbors or passersby. When the security guards arrived, I felt truly safe. Even though Maverick stopped coming to the house, the number of phone calls and emails increased. The worst were the emails to Serenity. He sent several messages per day requesting to meet. It was so severe that I hired a lawyer, and Maverick was granted a restraining order by the family court. Finally, I could experience true peace of mind. Now I'm visiting Mr. Anderson at the nursing home to explain what happened, and most importantly, to express my gratitude. Once again. "Oh, you came to see me again. I'm very happy. I wanted to thank you properly today. This is a small token of my gratitude." Saying that, I handed him a box of sweets. "I told you that you didn't have to do this. It's a reciprocal relationship. Then please accept it. Ha ha ha. All right, I will gladly accept it. How have you been? Thanks to you, I was able to continue working without any problems. We ended up living in a mansion unexpectedly, but not arrogantly. I continued working while Serenity concentrated on her studies. Because I never did anything expecting anything in return, I believe I can keep working with the same attitude. That is wonderful. It may be presumptuous of me to say. I hope you continue to keep an elderly man company. I'm sure many other people feel the same way I do." "Of course. Thank you." He smiled softly. "By the way, how is your daughter? Serenity? She has found a university she wishes to attend and is working hard to complete her studies.